What's up everyone, this is Dariusz Kalbarczyk, co-founder of MG Poland, JS Poland, Angular Master of Dev and Workshop Fest.dev. Welcome back to the Angular Master Podcast. Today we have a special guests from Netherlands, speakers, programmers actively involved in the open source community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeffrey Bosch and Sander Elias. Hi Jeffrey, hi Sander, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, I'm also fine. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So for those who don't know you yet, please tell us about yourself and what you do. Maybe we start with Jeffrey this time.
Yeah, sure. My name is Jeffrey. I work at a company called Stipley that is a part of the 4C group. We do a lot of things with Angular, but especially at our place, we do a thing around digital signing of documents. Most people maybe know me from being on a call with Sander or hosting the Dutch Angular group meetups. I'm also the author of a couple of open source libraries, which we probably will have a look at or speak over in this podcast. And that's me, basically.
That's amazing. So your turn, Sander.
Hi. I'm Sander again. I'm an Angular GDE and a GDE for web technologies. Looking at performance, I'm the author, the most significant author of Scully, where Jeffrey is also helping, by the way. I also created, together with Jeffrey, Validointi, and I have a boatload of other open source libraries out there. One of my open source libraries has currently hit 2.6 millions of downloads a week. Which
Wow.
impressed myself.
Wow.
So you know the drawing with the little tiny block on the below. Well, I have one of those tiny blocks.
How did your adventure in programming begin?
Well, my adventure in programming began in the late 70s. It's a little while ago, when my father brought home a computer, and I, of course, wanted to play games on this. The problem is there were no games. Computer games was not a thing that was invented yet. So I had to build my own games, and I quickly found out that I liked building the games much more than playing the games. So that's where I started. I joined our local community. I got active there, really active. I sold my first application on H11. And I can go on for quite a while, but I will leave it here.
That's amazing. How about you, Jeffrey?
Well, actually, from as a kid, I always was fascinated about computers, but not specifically on games. I'm not a gamer, if you want to put it in a specific place, but I just liked it. So I trashed a couple of them, looked at what they did and these kinds of stuff. And I naturally grow, for some reason, in a developer-ish role, and that's where it started. And then I found out something about open source, and then I was really hooked.
Can you explain what Scully is and why developers might want to use it?
Scully is a static site generator for Angular applications. What it does, it takes your Angular application, it tries to look at what routes are available, and it will create an index.html for every route in your application. It goes even a little bit further than just that. It has plugins, so you can tell it, hey, we have a route with product ID in it. So Scully can go out to your product API, get a list of all products, and render for every product the product page. The benefits of doing it like this, generating an index.html for every route, is that the performance of your applications is better because the time to first interactive is basically zero. Everything is there already. And it has a huge impact on search engine optimization, because your site is now fully searchable by all search engines, not only Google, but all of them. And this will do wonders for your indexation.
Can you discuss the role of ngx-aws in Scully's process of pre-rendering each page?
Yeah, we are using a third-party library called GasParser, and GasParser is a library that is created by Minko. What it does is it tries to read all of the routes out of your application, which works fine until you hit Angular 16 or standalone or any of the new stuff, because the GasParser doesn't work with that. And Minko has told me he has currently no bandwidth to fix this. So currently the route discovery is a little bit handicapped in Scully, but I have on good authority that this problem will be solved in one of the next Angular versions itself. I cannot say anything more about that, but I believe it so. And also you can manually feed a list of routes into Scully, so you can still use it. Even if it cannot discover a single route, you just say, hey, here is a list, go over those pages. And Scully will just take that list and go for there. For my private stuff, I created a small utility that just reads all of the routes and discovers it by itself. I cannot add that to Scully because there's really strict restrictions on what you can put in a route.ts file. So it's possible, but it's a little bit harder. We hope there will be something nice there. And pretty soon, as soon as Jeffrey is ready with the next version of the schematics, I will roll out a version 3.1 beta version that will work with all Angular versions from, I guess, 14 to whatever you currently have. But we still have to test it. We first have to have the schematics in place before we can test which versions of Angular it will work. For the older versions, we still have the versions that are already available on NPM, of course.
But what are the benefits of pre-rendering an app to HTML and CSS compared to traditional Angular app approach?
Yeah, it's also known as going on the gem stack. I think that's the thing that you want to hear. Gem stack basically means that your application is available as a boatload of index.html files. But the most important thing is you can also embed all of your data inside of these HTML files or next to it with JSON files. That means that you can put your site on a static host, including all the data, and you don't have to have a server at all. You can run your entire application running with all data in there, loading all the data without even having an API server. So that is the biggest benefit. The whole application is self-contained in static form. Of course, if you have something like a product checkout where you are selling stuff, you probably want to have an API server that can handle the sales, but you don't need to have an API server that hosts all of the products on the internet. You can just use your local developer tooling and local production server with your product database, render from there, and from that point on, all the data is embedded in the static files. So that is a big uptick, and that will save you a boatload on hosting. Hosting static files is cheap. Hosting computing is, well, not so cheap. So that is the biggest thing why you want to use something like Scully.
With the upcoming beta release of Scully version 3, what the improvements or new features can users looking forward to?
Well, version 3 is mostly a complete rebuild of the whole repo, so that the developer experience for us becomes a lot better. Also, the code is much more maintainable because of this, and it is a big overhaul where everything is moving to ESM modules. And that was needed because with Angular 13, we were not longer able to use non-ESM things. And as Scully is running on the node side too, we needed to do a boatload of things to get to the point that Scully was actually running correctly in all environments again. And that was not a problem of Scully itself. It was more the tooling that was not ready, a TypeScript that was not liking Node in combination with ESM, and all kinds of third-party problems. We have solved all of them now, and we just need to finish up the schematic, and then we can do a better release. The thing is, we are going a little bit slow because Scully right now is not sponsored, so it's the spare time of me and Jeffrey mostly. A couple of other people helping a little bit, and I don't know, but I don't have that much free time available.
Yeah,
so that slows things down a little bit.
Maybe it's good to at least highlight the topic around schematics, that what we will do is to have it as it is right now. Because yes, of course, we could introduce breaking changes because it's version 3, but we don't want to do this. So we want our people that are using Scully to at least seamlessly do the schematics or add it to their project as it is right now. And from that point, we will maybe make some breaking changes because the schematics have some things in there that we would like to do different, but we can't right now because yes, of course we could, but we don't want to have problems with our people that are using it. So expect maybe a breaking changes, but not in the beta release or the release in version 3, maybe version 4 or something like that.
Yeah. I want to add that there is a boatload of work going into the schematics because when we started Scully, we were on Angular 9 or 8 or something like that, and we did build the schematics. And then with every release, the schematics were a little bit adapted to what was the current state of Angular, which means we needed to support NX, we needed to support this, we needed to support whatever. In the end, the schematics became a dragon that were near impossible to maintain. And that's why it's taking a while, because Jeffrey right now is completely rewriting the schematics from scratch, using all the modern techniques that are there, so we can support the current CLI, the upcoming CLIs, and a couple of past CLIs. But also we will have an addition for NX, because NX has quite a number of different versions going around, with workspace there, no workspace there, and NX.json there, and NX.json not there, and all kinds of small changes that are not that hard if you keep up. But if you are a third-party author that is working in his free time, as we are, it is really hard to integrate all of those changes from all of those third-party libraries all the time. And that's why we are now going to come with a CLI schematic by default, and we will have an add-on NX schematic that will utilize that. And I think that will be way better moving forward.
You're listening, Angular Master Podcast. Listen, code, repeat. Everything you need to know to become an Angular super developer.
Can you talk about how Scully supports Angular version 12 and higher, and what does it mean for developers using older versions?
We actually already support Angular 12 with the current Scully that is available today. And it will also, the current version will also work with everything up to 16. It will not really work with version 16. It is supported. The only thing is automatic installation isn't supported because of the schematics issues. Scully itself has no issues. It will tell you there are some conflicts with your NPM things, but that is mostly versioning things in package.jsons more than any real problems. Scully will just take any Angular version and work with that. With the upcoming version, we are going to settle for supporting version 14 and later, because we are going to the new library format. We cannot support older things anymore.
What the spark that drives you to contribute to open source projects? What goodies do you get from it?
For me, it is mostly paying forward. Everything I've learned for the community. Well, not everything, but a lot I learned from the community. All of the software I currently use comes from open source. So I think it's good form and good karma to contribute to open source. Also, I really want to help all the developers to become better and do more in the same time. That is just something that drives me. if everyone would put some more time in open source, I think we would have a better world.
What about you, Jeffrey?
Yeah, well, I think I agree on all the points, and I would like to add it at least that for me, when I started open source, it was hard. I didn't know anybody in the open source, and I saw a project, and I was like, okay, how do I start with these kinds of stuff? And that is where I hope well, at least I can help people with my open source project, that when they are there, that I can at least assist them with a good onboarding or a good experience with their first commit, with their first PR, these kinds of stuff. And I know it's hard for me also, all these things are in your spare time, but it's always good to see new people coming in and assist you with your project, because they like to start with open source, or they like your product that you build, and they want to learn. And I think that's key in everything that we learn from each other. If it's on open source techniques, TypeScript, or just in life, let's learn from each other and help each other to grow in the thing they want.
Moving on to ngx-aws-deploy, could you explain what this tool is and what problems it solves?
Yeah, sure. So at least two things are in the name, because it's around Amazon and it's around deploying stuff. So a couple of years ago, I was working on a project, and I needed to upload basically the artifacts that are there when you do a ng build to the AWS S3 storage cloud service. But there wasn't like an easy way. I think at that time, maybe Firstall, Netlify, these kinds of cloud providers, they already had a way to easily say, okay, deploy your Angular application to the storage and it will work. But AWS didn't have a easy way. You always needed to do it with the AWS CLI or manually drag and drop it in the web interface. So that's basically where my problem is that there was no easy way to at least upload your artifacts from your ng build to S3 storage. So I had a look at how this worked at Netlify, again in the open source, I would say, and all these other tools, and I just started to build a tool which is ngx-aws-deploy to deploy your Angular application to the AWS S3 storage. And basically what it does, when you run your AJV-deploy command, which is a CLI command, you can give some options there to upload it to your specific S3 storage place, where people can then use it to make it for their website, for their business application, and these kinds of stuff.
So what are the benefits of deploying an Angular app directly to Amazon S3?
It's the same benefit-ish, I would say, probably as Netlify and all the other stuff. It's straight from I hope you do it from your pipeline, but if you do it from your laptop, it's straight on the storage, and you can have like I don't know what's called in Netlify, but a CloudFront distribution before it, so that it will be on the edge. So it will be the closest to your end users on their AWS cloud provider platform. So the time when people go to your website, go to your business application should be smaller than going directly to S3, because AWS does a couple of things around the distribution of these artifacts.
How does ngx-aws-deploy integrate with the Angular CLI?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we already highlighted a little bit about this, because it's built in the schematic. So when you do ng-add ngx-aws-deploy, you will get a couple of questions that help you to set up the project. And then actually you can just run the command from that point. It will give that in the output, so that you can build and deploy your application at once to the S3 storage.
What security consideration should users be aware of when using ngx-aws-deploy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that there are basically two main things you need to know about. Two things you need to know is that if you're running a local project that you just want to test out, it's good that if it's good that you use the angular.json to configure your AWS security keys and these kinds of stuff. But don't use it in production. So if you commit this to GitHub or GitLab or any of your Git repositories, don't use any security environment specific keys there, or at least make them invalid, because then everybody can hijack them, and then probably somebody will overwrite your application, which is probably maybe the funniest thing that would happen. So don't do that. But if you just are testing, like, how does this work? That's good. But I would recommend using a environment variables. So use a .env, add it to your git ignore, use something like .env to load all these environment keys, and then also in your GitLab pipeline, these kinds of stuff. And that would be the main security thing, I would say, because in the end, it's just uploading artifacts. So it's not a special magic thing that happens under the hood. It's just uploading artifacts. But that is the thing that most people forget, or I don't know. Maybe that's maybe also a thing that we should address a little bit more, is that all these keys that you put in your Angular.json, in your package.json, or all these kinds of stuff, it shouldn't be there, because otherwise people will hijack your SCDN.
What is Validointi and who came up with this name?
Yeah, it was me. It's Jeffrey. So maybe a little bit about the name. So it's a bit wrapped in the name. It's validation, validations. And I'm always mixing this up. Was it Italian or Finnish? I think it's Finnish, right? Yeah. So
it sounds the same. I check it. It sounds the same in Italian and in Finnish.
Yeah. That's exactly the thing. So we were chatting about this, and I know in my company there's a product that we use. I'm not going to mention the product, but that is also like something from Finnish. And I said, well, let's just have a look at what's good and how do you pronounce it, these kinds of stuff, because pronunciation is a thing when you don't speak the language. And this is a funny one, because it looks a little bit Italian. It is Finnish and these kinds of stuff, but in the end, it's all validation, and that's where also the main thing is from the package that we're talking about.
Well, Validointi makes validations for your template-driven forms easy. Drop that easy. Why? I think we first need to talk a little bit about forms and the concepts around forms before it becomes a little bit more clear what problem that it solves. I truly believe that validation is like a business concern. And people will argue with me, but then I say, hey, do you check your validations on your server? If yes, it is a business concern. I don't know how to explain it more easy, but that's just how it is. And wouldn't it be easy if we could reuse the validations we use on our server in the front end? Well, Validointi lets you do that. And how do we do that? Validation needs to be done on models. A model is basically your JavaScript object where all of your properties and all of your values are in. And then you're going to check, hey, names needs to be not empty, and it needs to be like at least 3 tokens, and we preferably want like 1 capital in there. Things like that. Don't do validation like that. Those are terrible, but that is just as simple. If you have if you have a password and a confirmed password, you want to check if they are the same. Otherwise, there is little use in having those. But those validations are between 2 fields. And all kinds of those kinds of validations. But validations are really a business concerns, and you should validate your data. You shouldn't validate whatever is on your screen. What is on your screen is the result of the validation. You put in new things there. The validation gets done by a validation routine, and the results of the validation should be updated in your screen. And Validointi helps you with that. You can write your validation suites or your validations logic with a library called Fast, or you can use Joi, or you can use any of the other validation libraries that are available. The big uptick of this is that you can reuse the validations both in your front end and in your back end, and wherever that you can do JavaScript validations. You can even write your JavaScript validations in pure JavaScript if that's what you prefer. If you say, I don't want to have another heavy library. I understand if you have like only a couple of simple validations, you probably don't need the library. You probably can just use whatever is available in HTML, like a required and stuff like that. But if you have a little bit more complex validations and you can write it in 10 lines of JavaScript code, that doesn't warrant an entire library. But even if you write it yourself, we have a tool that hooks it easily up to Angular forms. So your validation runs, that gets the result back, usually in an object that has like the property name and undefined if it's all right, or a form of an error, usually a string array with not a valid ID or something like that. And then we hook that back up into your form using Validointi. And that is, in short, what we do.
So how does Validointi make validation for Angular template forms easier?
Because you don't have to worry about it at all. You add one directive to your ng form and you're done. So in your template, you add one line of code and validation is taken care of.
Yeah, so basically when we built this, we had like a couple of basic concepts. One, it shouldn't be easy to use template forms because template forms is already easy, I would say. And we don't want to hassle around how people do their implementation around validations. So we came up basically with the model, and Sander already touched it, and the model in a, how do you call it, maybe model-driven form is always an object, and you have a name and an address and these kinds of stuff. It's pretty simple, I would say. And the other thing is that when you do validations, we would like to have a way that is agnostic from Angular. It shouldn't be Angular specific because there are a lot of good validation libraries out there that do a much better job than just custom programming a validation. I think we all can do a simple regex, but if it gets complex, it's hard for us as developers to understand what the regex is if we don't comment it or have a good look at it. So we looked at a couple of libraries, VES, Joi, and AJV, like how can we easily use these kinds of tooling that is already there, that is good maintained by their authors or their community around this, and how can we hook this up basically on the Angular form validation way, I would say. Well, so we come up with a way that was indeed just one directive where you register basically your form and your validation set. So not the validation library, but just a set of validations where you say, okay, this is my user with address form, and then from that point you say, okay, and I want to register this validation set of functions there. And under the hood, what we do is basically we have a registry where you can hook up all your different forms. So if you have like 6 forms, it will be there. It will be cached also. So that's just run one time and it's easy to get it out. So performance-wise is also pretty good. And when Angular then checks for changes on the form and when the validation runs, we hook up all these validations and the errors and execute basically the validation library, the validation suite that is there. And from that point, we will tell Angular with like, okay, you need to set the error, you need to do your magic that is in the Angular framework then, and we will provide you with a set of errors, if there are errors, of course, that you need to tell your user basically. And then one other concept we came up next to the validation library and how that integrates with Angular is that we saw that when you have VES, Joi, and AJV, you also need an easy way to support these kinds of packages. So we came up with the concept of adapters. And at this moment, I think we have VES and Joi, I say it from the top of my head, where you can easily register your validation and your validation functions and use the adapter to say, okay, I got this in my backend already. I used a vest in the backend, for example, with my vest functions, and I say, hook it up to the Validointi library, basically. And these adapters are just there so that we can easily, what we understand, or our package understands what you mean, and you can easily register your validation functions.
Let me add there something. Angular has already a way to communicate errors to forms. There is a interface in Angular that defines how you communicate errors to a form. That is already in the Angular thing. We are reusing that. We are using that, and our adapter takes the result of whatever library you have and reformats it into the way Angular understands errors, which is basically an object with the form name, colon, and then the errors are undefined or not there if it's all okay. So that is a little translation that is done for Fast, and we have the same translation for Joi. Most of those things are very, very similar because they solve a similar problem, and the outcome is always something similar, but you always need to tweak it a little bit because libraries always will have little differences, but it always translates down to like Angular validation form errors, and then we use the form control, the form controls to hook this up back into your form. We take the form itself. The form as a list of form controls that are in there, and this way we hook it all up back together. One important thing is the names you use in the form should be the property names that are in your model, because otherwise it has no way to hook it up.
Can you tell us more about Vest, AJV, and Joi?
Well, it will be a joy to tell you about Vest. Vest is those are validation libraries. I like Vest because if you go to the Vest website and you take a look at it, you will see that it approaches validations the same way as developers approach tests. So it's basically similar to writing tests. You say, describe this, expect model name to be or not empty, and all those, and it is just like writing tests, and that is a really easy developer experience. That's why we started with Vest. Also, we wanted to test a little bit with it, and I created a small dynamic form for demonstrations, and I had to go back and forth with the maintainers of Vest to get it going because I was doing things that they were not prepared for. So it was a little bit too dynamic for Vest, but it worked in the end. Joi is, I think, the oldest and the biggest validation library that is available online. It came from HP, but it split it out. And it's its own thing now for a long time already. And it has like a huge amount of supporters there, and there's a huge community around Joi, so we support Joi too. I have used it like years ago, so everything that I will say about it now is probably a little dated at least, so I will leave it there. I know it's a good validation library. I did some things with Vest. I liked Vest. AVG, I looked at the code. It looked okay to me, but I was already using Vest, so I had no interest in looking any further. But if you need validation, go look for a library that resonates with the way you work and with the way your data is built, and use it. And if it's not supported by Validointi, you can write an adapter for it. That is not that hard. There are a couple of samples in our repo. If you cannot do that by yourself, just set up a suite with the thing, hand it over to us, and I will write an adapter for you, because that will probably take me like 10 minutes.
That sounds amazing. So the recommendation is to using Vest.
The recommendation is using our library. And we prefer Vest, but that is a personal preference.
We are library agnostic, I would say. We have the most experience with these two. And Vest, the main reason, and Sander already tipped it, is that indeed a Vest, you write these kinds of validation functions as a test. And that is something that we as developers have done a million times, I would say, is to write a test. And especially with Karma and Jest, which is very popular in the Angular community, we know already a little bit about the syntax. It feels like natural to do these kinds of stuff.
Great. So how does Validointi work with the new standalone API?
Well, I would say when we started this project, I think is it 13 or 14? I'm not sure exactly, but we already knew that standalone was coming. So we started with standalone and we use standalone standalone directives as default, I would say. So you can hook it up as import it in your module if you are not running a standalone application or don't use standalone, and you can add, or you can use it in your standalone application. It doesn't matter for us in this way.
So how can Validointi handle both synchronous and asynchronous validation rules?
Well, it's quite simple. Everything is async in Validointi, so it handles everything async, and that solves the problem. There is a more profound reason behind this, because Angular has bent over backwards to do sync validations, which make little to no sense. If you think about it, why would you like sync validation? A user is typing something and I need the answer before he's done typing. And when is he done typing? I don't know. It makes no sense to do those things sync. It makes so much more sense to just do this async by default, because if you need to look up anything, it is going to be async anyway. And this way it becomes easy. In our future, you can say, hey, and we probably will create an adapter for this. We will send the data to a server, have the server do the validation, and just send the result back.
To sum up this discussion about Validointi, what we can expect in the future versions?
I think we are feature complete. We will maintain it. We will make sure that it keeps running with whatever Angular version there is. If someone comes up with a really, really good idea, we will add it. I would not know one, because actually it does what it is supposed to do. I'm liking the Linux philosophy: do one thing and do one thing good. And that is what the Validointi does. It hooks up any validation library to your Angular template-driven forms.
Yeah, but probably some adapters here or there for specific libraries or specific cases. Maybe if there ever will be a warning message, we will add something so that it's easy to do. You see as a Vest, for example, you can also do warnings in validations and not like errors. And Angular at this moment only supports errors. So these kinds of things, maybe if it will be supported also in Angular, we do use it, then that. But for the rest, it's pretty future proof, I would say. Go just template forms. Just use template forms.
Yeah. We are not. If someone comes with a PR to support reactive forms, we might accept it unwillingly. But yeah, the thing is, we are a big pronoun. I really like template-driven forms. I don't like reactive forms. I don't think this is a secret to anyone that knows me. Reactive forms will make you do so much more work for no reason whatsoever. And then people keep on insisting using reactive forms for I don't know what reason. I always ask, why do you want reactive forms? What is the reason you prefer reactive over template-driven? And then they come with something, and usually it is, I need to observe whatever, Well, you can do the same thing with template-driven forms. You can just get the form controller and subscribe to value changes on anything. So that is because under the hood, those are both the same thing. They are running from the same Angular library. So there is nothing you can do with reactive forms that you cannot do with template-driven forms, and all the way around. With reactive forms, you just have to type up a load more.
So, do you have some hints for us regarding self-organization?
I would say, Sander knows, not a lot of people knows, I got a little kid of 2, so it was a mind shift before, because I did a lot more open source, I would say. So for all the new dads or women out there, do it when you feel that you have the energy, and just do it if you want to have like fun. And that was my main reason when I started open source. Even during that, I created a couple of packages that were more used by the community or more used by people. Just do it for fun and take your time. It doesn't matter if you wait for a week. And if you do it for the fun, then you will find the time and the right place and the right moment to work on all these stuff. Focus on your health and just do your work and these kinds of stuff. And then everything for your self-organization will go good. At least that was a thing that helped me a lot, is that when you just do things when you want to and you have fun, then it will work for you. So do your work, do your family stuff first, and then if you still have some time and these kinds of stuff, just do it for fun. And if it's a week later, then it's a week later. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, for me it's a little bit different. I have permanent insomnia, so I usually sleep 4 to 5 hours and that's it. So I have a couple of more hours available than most people. And that helps. Also, do what you love. If you like doing things, it doesn't drain energy, it brings you energy. I love doing things like Scully, and Scully brings me energy still. And it is going slower, but it still brings me energy. People are happy with it, and we get positive feedback. So then it is a nice thing. Sometimes you need to scratch your own itch. If you just say, hey, I have this problem, I want to build something for it, just build it in open source. I'm working on a couple of projects that I might open source. I'm not sure yet. I might do them commercial too. Depends a little bit. But do things that you love. And I think that's the most important thing. If you are going to your computer and say, oh, I have to, well, you don't. So don't do that. Sometimes there will always be chores that have to be done, and those are annoying. But most of the times, just do what you think is fun. If you love writing documentation, please contact me. We need our documentation writer, but if that's what you like to do, if you like writing, if you are good in explaining things in writing, go to our repo that you like. Say, hey, I like this whole Validointi thing. I would like to contribute. Write some blogs about it. You can start out. Just write blogs about something that you find interesting or annoying, or how would I do this differently? Those make the most interesting kinds of blog posts, or whatever you want to make out of it. I like to play in the open with all of my samples. I have a samples repo. People can look there and they will find boatloads and boatloads of code samples where I just had basically a brain fart and just created something so it was out of my mind. And quite often I find myself going back there to, oh, I created this, and I go back there and pick it up from there and make it production ready. Because yes, it is a samples repo. Not everything in there is production ready.
How about your work-life balance?
If you enjoy what you do, it's way less of a problem. If you enjoy your day job, it is not a big of a problem to work a couple of hours extra if needed. Don't throw this in for free every day. But work-life balance is really about that. You need to do what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy your work, keep it at the 8 hours you're supposed to do and do something else after that. If you enjoy your work, you might as well do a couple of extra hours on open source or anything. And then that is still like a healthy work-life balance. Just don't go 12 hours for work where they are paying for. Occasionally that is okay, but it's not good if you do this as a rule. Just do what you're supposed to do and work for the hours you're supposed to work. If they are piling up a boatload of work that you cannot get done in 8 hours a day, that's a planning or a management issue that is not your issue to solve.
Yeah, I would add, have a lot of fun. If it is in your work, if it is in your life, just go and make a lot of fun, because I find it's all easier when you have a lot of fun with your friends, with your colleagues, with your family. If it's a rough time and you have a lot of fun together, and then it's much easier to balance all these kinds of stuff. So I would resume, just go have fun. If it is in the open source, if it is on the court, on football, or if you hang out with friends, that's your thing, do that. And the second one I would add, for me, it's like have a good mental health. And for everybody that's different. For me, that works with doing fitness and these kinds of stuff. But mental health is a big thing. And you can do 8 hours or 12 hours working. And yes, you can do still the diapers of your kid and these kinds of stuff. But also pay a little bit of attention about your personal mental health. And well, for the one, it's sports. For the other one, it's just walking around. For another person, it's reading books. But do these kinds of stuff. It's very important.
What advice would you give to people who are starting their career in the software world today? And what for those who are old-timers?
For newcomers, I would say try to limit yourself. Learn one thing and learn one thing well. When you have learned this one thing, add something. And there is always more to add. So that is the one for the old-timers. Don't try to add everything. It's impossible. There is so much you cannot know everything.
Yeah, and I think if I look at my career when I started, what really helped me, and I mean really, was finding the right community that fits with you. And if you're doing Angular or any other framework or any other tool or whatever you use, there are a lot of communities out there that on the social media channels or these kinds of stuff. Find them, because it will really help you in your career, and that's always for the newcomers, but also for the old timers. You call it old timers, right? Like, go find a community, and probably the more junior people will just have a chat, learn, drink some beers together, and the old timers then can share their knowledge. And I would add to the old timers, if you name it like that. Share your knowledge. That's very important for the newcomers. So don't only review a PR and say this is wrong. Add value. Why is it wrong? What does he or she do?
Want you to do that?
I know you do that, but I can handle it. but that's very important in your start of your career, is know what the reason behind is, why you're doing something in an incorrect way, and sometimes that's forgotten, I would say. I don't know why, but probably just because of the stress or the work stress and these kinds of stuff. Just explain the reason why it is a wrong pattern, a wrong way of solving it in Angular, these kinds of stuff.
I want to add something, because this gets forgotten all the time. Just learn the basic tools of your trade. If you are a front-end developer, learn HTML and learn CSS. You don't HTML you can learn in depth in like 2 days. CSS you can learn in depth never, but you should at least try to have like some basic knowledge about those things. For old-timers, I would say do not forget about the basics. Do not forget about the things you can do in HTML and CSS directly without touching a single line of code. I see so many code bases that are piling in entire libraries for things that can be solved with 2 lines of CSS.
Books you would recommend to our listeners, technical or non-technical?
Well, I keep the juniors and maybe a little bit about the old timers then. If the juniors were on the Angular podcast, I would say I reviewed the book from Aristides Bompakos, the GDE from Greece, Learning Angular, or the Angular Projects, I think it was called. Have a look at those. And the other one for the more old timers, I would say, is Sarah Dreshnell. I hope I don't butcher her last name, but she has something that's called Engineering Management for the rest of us. I'm just halfway, but it's pretty interesting if you are a manager, team lead, or these kinds of stuff, and how you do these kinds of stuff, providing your team with value or share things with each other.
Jeffrey just stole one of my recommendations, the Book of Errors. I really would recommend that. But for my second recommendations, I'm not even recommending a single book, but an entire series. Go read the Discworld series of Terry Pratchett. Those are highly entertaining.
Big thanks for today's epic chat, my friends. Talking with people who've got that Farley passion is just a blast. Much love and catch you soon. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and smash the like for this podcast.